My name is Cheryl Erickson, and I'm the Indigenous focused ECE instructor with Louis Riel Vocational College. Today in Chapter 4 of Understanding Children Through Observation, we're going to look at observing children through the lens of play. But before we get started, just a reminder to read Chapter 4, as this video isn't a replacement for your chapter readings. So when we look at observing children through that lens of play, that is a very important part of our jobs as ECE professionals. Children spend most of their time in early learning settings, as well as in their day-to-day waking hours involved in playing. And that is deemed how they're learning in the early years. So we want to really focus on what types of play they're involved in and how they are playing. I think a lot of times in our day-to-day interactions in the early learning environment, we know that children are playing and we see that they're busy, involved in play, but we're not really paying attention to the types of play that they're involved in. And so we want to make time in our day to really get involved and do some observation with that. So the play lens allows us to see children often in a new light. When you sit back and watch children, it tells you where they are developmentally, and that goes from all four developmental domains. So through observing play, you can see little bits and pieces of how they're developmentally functioning cognitively, socially, emotionally as well. And so it also, if you sit down and get involved in that play, really does help you to get to know the child a little bit more, developing those relationships, finding things that are in common, seeing children in that play environment really shows the uniqueness of children, and really you get to find that joy when you see children excited about play and how natural that is unfolding. And so because our curriculum is play-based, observing children in their day-to-day interactions in that play really helps us plan better activities, and it helps us really promote development within that program. So what do we know, or what do we learn with observing children with that lens of play? We know that play teaches children about the world around them. And through that interactions and that play, they're discovering new things about themselves, about others, and just the materials that they're interacting with in that environment. And so play also is really important because it helps children act out real life situations. And you see that unfolding as they are learning and growing, and they're going through different phases of play. So from parallel play to social play, to associative types of play. So it's nice to see those types of play unfolding. What do we see as children are playing? So when we're sitting back and we're observing children in their environment, we see how complex their play can get. And so that just changes as children are learning and growing. So play for a 2-year-old isn't as complex as play for 4 and 5-year-olds. So children at older ages are going to take on different roles. There's more cooperative types of play. They're more purposeful types of play, and it's really nice to see that unfolding and to see children moving through those stages of play. And so our observations see how children are growing, the skills and abilities that they're developing, and again, it focuses on those realms of the developmental domains and where they are at. So again, it's really nice to see those stages of play unfold as children are learning and growing. So I've attached a slide that shows you developmental milestones for children 3 months up to 4 years of age. And so it's just paints a little bit of a picture of where children should be developmentally. And so when you're observing children through their play, when you're looking at the different ages, 2, 3, and 4 years is my example, there should be specific things that children should be able to do within those play situations. So you'll want to be mindful of that when you're observing, and things such as developing activities or materials that you might put in your different activity centers in your environment can be helpful for children to reach those different developmental milestones. So again, you know, this is another reason why we want to observe children and where they are in their play, how they are interacting, for example, socially, could help us as ECEs see where they are in that social development and want to help them to meet that next developmental milestone, and how we can set up some different play activities to scaffold their learning would be a positive outcome through observing through that play lens. And so just in conclusion, I do have a video attached that will help you see how children are developing through play, or see how children are interacting through the different stages of play, which fall under that realm of observing children through that lens of play. So please take the time to watch that video. In conclusion, if you do have any questions regarding that video as well as the chapter, please see your instructor. Also, just to check in to ensure you haven't missed any assignments or handouts pertaining to Chapter 4.
Play is an activity that young children do every day. And we all know that it's important. But did you know that research shows that play is actually central to young children's learning? What can you do to help children get the most learning from their play? When you look at play, when you watch children play, it's pretty obvious that it's a really enjoyable, fun activity for children. Probably is what makes childhood so enjoyable. What is not as obvious, maybe, is how important play is for children's development. Research has found that play helps children to think creatively. They learn all kinds of different problem-solving strategies when they play. Play has been linked to language development, and certainly it leads to positive social skills. One of the more important things that research shows is that play is related to reading and learning to write. One way that play helps children in literacy areas is that it's very symbolic. For example, when they're using a toy telephone to represent a real phone, they're using a symbol. That's not unlike looking at a word and seeing that it represents something that's not present or something in real life. One element of play that I think is important to observe in children is pretend or make-believe. One thing you want to watch for as you're watching children play is, do they engage in make-believe? Do they take on the roles of pretend characters or other people in their lives? Do they use objects in make-believe ways? Do they invent imaginative play situations to play out with their peers? There are a variety of ways that adults can kind of enhance this kind of pretend. One really enjoyable way to do this is simply to play along with children, to actually take a make-believe role, play parallel or with children, to make play suggestions, to ask questions, to kind of encourage this kind of role play.
You know how much it's going to cost to get my car fixed, Jane?
A second element that I think is important for adults to look at when they're observing children's play is social interaction. And related to that, verbalization, using language as you're interacting with your peers.
I need another long one. There is no more long one.
You want to see a lot of language in this kind of play setting.
Maybe we can do this. No. No. This is a long one.
Take a role, try to facilitate more language by asking questions, trying to facilitate some peer interaction. A third element of play that I think is important for adults to look for is what's sometimes been called play complexity. As children get a little bit older into the preschool years, what you like to see is a greater variety of enactments as they're carrying out a role. If children aren't playing that kind of complex play, if they're still quite simple and repetitive in their make-believe or in other kinds of play that they engage in, it might be time for an adult to move in and facilitate.
Sounds like you're playing house. Are you playing house?
Again, through question asking, maybe suggesting some new enactments to perform, will help the play to become more complex.
What's this baby's name?
One thing I'd like to be sure to caution about is that playing with children is great fun, and so all of these strategies to facilitate play will be very enjoyable for the adult as well as the child. The thing we have to be careful about, though, is not to stay too long, to overstay our welcome, but to be sure that after a period of enriching children's play, we get out of the play center to allow them to play on their own. We need to be very respectful of children's play activities. When you enhance children's play in these ways, when you facilitate their pretend play, the complexity of their play, social interaction, not only are you enhancing their play, but this leads directly to overall advancement in children's development. Play is a wonderful tool for parents and teachers to use, a wonderful vehicle for promoting larger areas of development.
Okay. 52.
52.
What do you need to